Forrester. This is all in the news. She asked another question, Stan. Why of what literature is left in Common Core, the exemplar text, why is so much of it developmental, violently, or sexually inappropriate for kids? Why is so much of what literature is left inappropriate at a number of levels? This is just the one obvious one, but there are 24 books like this. Books like Dreaming in Cupid, books like The Black Swan, books that have been in schools. And this book has been in Common Core textbooks for kids as young as 8th graders, middle school. Toni Morrison is a great, this is The Bluest Eye. It's a great book. She's an African-American novelist, Nobel Prize winner, but we wouldn't assign this book to freshmen in college. It's all about a 12-year-old girl who's the victim of rape and incest. And over the course of the book, she comes to bond in a dysfunctional way with a rapist and starts to write in exceedingly graphic detail the nature of their encounters. I block all the bad words, but if I don't put this up there, people don't believe me, so take a quick look. It's quiet. The font is kind of small, but you can get a sense of the kind of things here. As young as 8th graders in Common Core. And whenever this is pointed out, well, that school district made a bad decision, or that teacher was remiss, or that textbook was at fault. No. All those things may be true, but these are the exemplar texts picked by Common Core. Why are you surprised that the textbooks all have them in it, or many of the textbooks have them in it? And why would you be surprised if that's what your teachers have to do, is teach the curriculum standards, that they would teach these books? And wait till you get your tests, and this kind of stuff becomes on those tests. Right now, you have the latitude just to not teach that story. But what happens when the tests come in? And if the tests, by design, gear up with this kind of stuff? And I'm going to show you in about 10 minutes why this stuff has to be in Common Core. Books like Dreaming in Cupid, The Black Swan, she estimates that there are at least 35 books for high school students alone that are properly sexually inappropriate. And she asked the question, why? We need to explore why so many of these exemplar texts are out of place, not just in the subject area Common Core placed them, but in a high school curriculum altogether. What are they doing there? And see, we had Dave, where's Arma from? Down south. Down by Germantown. Arma, a young mother showed up at one of our talks, and she handed me, I got them at the office, 100 pages of dystopian literature that her 4th grader was reading. And by dystopian, I mean, this was 5 different stories measuring 100 pages. Her daughter had spent 1 month in English class reading them. Every one of those stories was about how after the United States destroys the world through global warming, what happens next? And it's all about cannibalism and rape and what's going to happen when the environment is destroyed. Graphically for over 100 pages. And that was for 4th graders. Not little kids aren't reading pornography, but are they reading things that are suggestively and developmentally ahead of them? Absolutely. Why are they doing that? And by the way, you understand this, right? If I require calculus for my 3rd grade math students, they're all going to fail. That isn't rigorous. It's inappropriate. And so there, as Milgram says, we're talking about the math, at the lowest levels of Common Core math, you're asking kids to do things that they developmentally can't do. But by the time you get to middle school and high school math, they're doing much less math than they need to. You start off at the bottom end by having kids do assignments and calculations they can't do. Yet, ironically, Milgram says, the higher up you go, the less serious math they're engaged in. This is the English. And I'm going to leave that question hanging, because I think there's an answer for this, which we'll show you in a moment. And so I was speaking to Professor Milgram about this, and this is really interesting. Milgram, being the math guy, when he got to the committee for a whole month on the Common Core math committee, the validation committee, the Common Core people said, here's a list. You can get the same list from the Wisconsin DPI. When you go and ask the DPI to prove that they validated the math standards, they measured them against high-achieving math countries, they're going to hand you a document about 20 countries' names. Not a shred of evidence, just a list of names. Milgram said that's what they did to me. And as the math guy, I said, that's great, you picked all the right countries. Show me your math. Show me your data. Show me how you benchmark. Show me how you know it. And for a month, nobody turned them over anything. They didn't turn anything over. Sandy asked the same thing in English. What are you measuring this against? They never provided anything. That's one of the questions that Secretary Evers was asked in Madison. Show us. Never provided anything. In fact, nobody anywhere has ever provided the math to show that this was measured against. Sandy said, I am convinced that they broke down a list of countries on a name and that was the end of it, because if they had that information, knowing we weren't going to vote for it, they would have showed it to us. And no one anywhere seen it. So if indeed Common Core has done those things, good luck trying to find out from whom. So I asked him about it, and he points to this video. It's kind of a famous video now. What is the philosophy then behind Common Core? What is the purpose of it? What is the ethos of it? He said here, this young woman is a community organizer from Chicago, and she's speaking to a group of Illinois high school teachers. What a small world Common Core is. A week ago today, I was down in Libertyville, Illinois, giving this talk, and the guy who was filming it for the Libertyville Tea Party, he was the same guy who filmed this video. And Dave could back me up. He came up to us afterwards. He said, I just got a small clip of this. He said it was much worse than first thing. But here's a short clip of the philosophy of Common Core.
But even under the new Common Core, even if they said 3 times 4 was 11, if they were able to explain their reasoning and explain how they came up with their answer really in words and oral explanations, and they showed it in the picture, but they just got the final number wrong, we're really more focusing on the how and the why.
Right, no, that's about it. That this is a math curriculum that's designed to make lots of people comfortable with math, but not necessarily allow those who can really excel to do so. I talked to him about my circumstance. When I was a kid, when I was in 3rd grade, I, for some reason, had a really high reading level, like almost college level. So in 3rd grade, they let me read college level books. It's probably why I entered the high finance world of English professors. Because I could. But in 3rd grade, my math skills were decidedly 2nd grade, and you know what? They still are. I can balance a checkbook, calculate a tip. That's about it. Again, so bad. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but in the last couple of years, we've lost more gifted and talented programs across the country in the previous 4 years. And why? Because when you have this kind of standards-based education, it is just as bad to have kids accelerate the standard as they do to fall behind it. You have to cool them down. In fact, if you're going to err on one side with this kind of education, you're much better off having kids fall short of the standard. Because when they fall short, as happened for 12 consecutive years and no child left behind, when they don't get there, you just lower the standard. So I don't care how high Common Core claims to be. If you're going to get many, most, or even a lot of kids to those standards, you can do the math on this, right? You want to get more kids to a standard. Do you lower the standards or do you raise them? You gotta lower them. Right? And this is part of the problem. So this is interesting. Process math. You know, in elementary schools in places like New York and Kentucky, for instance, one of the preferred ways to do Common Core math is the so-called parent share program, where you put kids in groups of 2 and 3. The teacher doesn't really teach math. The teacher puts kids in small groups and gives them a problem. The purpose of the exercise is not to get the right answer, but to come to agreement on what the kids all think the answer is. We got tests in New York from mom sending us a little boy in 3rd grade, a multiplication question. 6 times 7, he wrote 42. He gets it marked wrong because and little red pencil note, the other 2 kids in your peer group agreed on a different answer. And because they agreed, they got it marked right. You got it marked wrong because you didn't agree. Another little boy in 4th grade, I believe it was 4th grade, an addition problem, the answer was 111. He got the answer marked wrong because, silly kid, he wrote 111, rather than drawing the 111 circles called for by the answer. And I don't want to be glib with you. I understand, as a bad math student myself, I understand that maybe sometimes you want to model different ways of doing math for different learners. I get that. But if that's what this is about, as Milgram points out, why aren't they teaching kids at the youngest grade traditional ways to do math? It's not like you're doing the old stacking method. It's not like you're teaching kids the way you and I learned it, and then in the interest of trying to broaden people, step back and add more things that you're not doing math with Common Core. So he points to the next video. This woman he knows. She is a college math professor, and she cannot help her 5th grader with his math homework, her 3rd grade daughter, with her math homework. So she puts the little kid at a black and white board and makes her do a problem and explain it. There's one more name I want to get you on this. Jason Zimba. Z-I-M-B-A. Look him up. He is the David Coleman of math. He is the man most responsible for math standards. Interestingly, Zimba used to be a former student of Milgram's. And Milgram says this guy does not have the math to do it. And this will shock you. In a recent, if you type in his name, you'll find this. Zimba himself admitted, just 2 months ago, Zimba admitted, it's true, he said. Common Core math will not prepare all our kids for college level math. He said, at best, Zimba said this, the best of our students will be ready for math at a 2-year technical college. That's what Zimba, don't take my word for it. I gotta throw that slide in here now that this is new, by the way, but I didn't used to include all that teachers union stuff. But then I just kept hearing, you're just a right winger. Okay, so fine, I threw that in there. I gotta throw this in there too. Zimba himself admits it. What do you make of a math curriculum like that? This curriculum, the standards, they're designed to make somebody like me, who's lousy at math, feel much better about myself. It's not designed to allow really good math students to excel. And there's a reason why not every kid can do math at a high level. It's hard. So here's this clip. Here's your math problem. You're going to add three numbers, this third grade girl. And the numbers are 1568, 1423, and 680. Simple story problem.
So what I want you to do is, can you solve that problem showing me the way that you learned how to solve it in school? And talk to me while you're solving it.
So we learned that a big square like this is 100. So we could make that 100 into a cube, we could make it sound very deep.
Okay, so if a square is 100, then a cube is 1,000.
So let's just say that's 1,000. And now we still have to do 500. Could make that just 5 sheets.
Do you notice how nobody's adding anything yet? This is just what you have to do to get the numbers on the board.
We have to
So the lines are 10s and the dots are 1s.
for the first thing.
Now you got to put the second number on the board.
Now we the dots represent 1.
Okay.
So now we have to add all of these together. So you could make 1,000. All of these together is 400. Now you need 600 more. So now I'm going to write the numbers down. So we have 1,000 plus, well, let's just say 3,000. Because we have 3,000 plus 1,000. So now we can erase all the sheets and hundreds of tens. So we can just add exactly that's a total of 3,763.
Okay. Oh, now that problem you just solved took about 8 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's what we're doing in school. But at home, I can't have it stacked. And we have a lot of people stacking in school.
And it's not that you teach them stacking in the other way. You can't do stacking
So
in
I'm
Common Core.
going to stack these numbers, which is very easy.
What are you thinking? You're looking at your problems.
I got 2 different ones.
You got 2 different answers. What do you think happened?
Maybe I counted wrong.
Looks like you did the stacking correctly, and that took you about a minute.
So I think I did something messed up and I just
What do you think happened?
well, since that way was more confusing.
I repeat, I do not want to be glib. I understand that maybe that would help some kids. But in a vacuum, it can't, right? This is the kind of thing you're teaching kids. And one of the problems Milgram points to, and he's right about this, is that one thing we can say about how Common Core math is being done, if it were all done the same way, if every single time a square equaled 100 or a cube equaled 1,000, then you and, well, not me, you could all figure that out and help your kids with their math. But it's done differently, from textbook to textbook. that sometimes it's squiggly lines, dots, and dashes. That famous example from one school where kids had to draw cows to be able to add, and you had to count the lengths of the cows to get the number, and you had to draw the cows or you didn't get credit for it, or hundreds of circles at a time. I get that some kids are visual learners, but kids who learn that way are not going to be great mathematicians anyway. And what would my life have been like if the one thing I could do well, I was artificially held back because of the standard? Can you imagine what my life would have turned out to be if I had to read Beezus and Ramona for 5 years consecutively? It's a problem, Milgram says. And that's one of the features of this for him and for Sandy too, and for all the kids. How many of you have heard of the famous comedian Louis C.K.? Right? He's a big-time Hollywood comedian, big-time liberal supporter of the president. He went on David Letterman a couple weeks ago and brought his 5th or 6th grade daughter's math homework. And the two of them spent a half an hour mocking the absurdity of it all. I mean, my point, you're getting really serious liberal people now who are beginning to just mock the absurdity of all this. There's not the same way to do it. And one of the features of Common Core pedagogy is that moms and dads aren't able. We got a mom up in Green Bay. She's a doctor. She's one of the only people in Wisconsin history ever to get a perfect score on her math MCATs. And she can't help her 5th grade son with math because it's how do you come up with this stuff? Okay. Milgram also points out that in every high-achieving math country, he actually looked at the numbers. In every high-achieving math country on earth, kids begin serious algebra in 7th or even 6th grade. In No Child Left Behind America, American school kids routinely began serious algebra not until 8th grade. And under Common Core, algebra is routinely pushed into freshman year of high school, serious algebra. As Milgram points out, and this is what Jason Zimba agreed with, that your kids will not be able to get calculus and advanced math in high school. That's why Milgram said, how in the world are your kids going to be prepared for kids in architecture, careers in architecture, or math, or science? How are you going to do that? That's why he voted no. And this is a guy, I should also tell you, both Milgram and Stotsky are Yankee Democrats. They're not Republicans, number one. Number two, this is what really bothers. And Milgram is not against standards. I don't like them. He says I would be compelled, I could go for them, he said, if they were the right standards. These standards don't have. In fact, this whole communal stuff, right? This idea that math is a community enterprise, that the purpose of mathematics is to get kids communally to participate that way. I have no doubt that for some kids, talking about or talking through math can be a useful thing. Right? But then there's this stuff. This is one of 24 school districts already that I've called this from. What happens? Because of the standard. You got moms and dads all over the country now. In California, moms and dads started freaking out because by the time their kids reached 4th grade, they could not add and subtract independently in their heads. 4th grade. So these moms started hiring tutors and working up with their kids. The school districts are freaking out about this. You got kids now trying to get ahead. You got 20 different school districts in the state already, in the country that I found, who are threatening and warning moms and dads not to teach your kids more math than they're supposed to learn in the classroom. Here's just one of them. This may be the most shocking thing I've shown you yet. This is from the Irvine Unified School District, the whole school district in Irvine County, Orange County, California. Here's the warning. The links on this page are intended to support the classroom instruction that your child receives from his teacher. It is not appropriate to go ahead of the classroom instruction or to use this site to have your child work on math that is intended for use in subsequent grades. And here's your threat. Here's your threat. Your child's math instruction and placement will not change as a result of working ahead. This means that your child will continue to work in the grade level appropriate math regardless of any materials that he turns in. I don't care how smart your kid is, I don't care how much math your kid can do, he will stay with his peer group and do that math. So stop hiring your tutors, stop trying to get him to work ahead. You've got American school districts now telling families this. So do you understand why they have to do this? Do you understand why? Because of the standards, right? All right. Now we're in the final part of the talk, and it'll go pretty quick. I want you to listen to me carefully, please. I'm going to tell you exactly when and where and how this is Common Core. This is that third part. Not all of this is Common Core, and not all of it's Common Core's fault, but Common Core is the chosen vehicle now through which a lot of this stuff is going to happen. I will be very specific. Don't go running to your school board. Don't harass your poor beleaguered principal when he's trying to get out of his car at the grocery mart. Listen to what I'm telling you and do not overreact. Understand where I'm getting this information. I'll make it all available to you. Whenever something like this big happens, there are going to be people who latch onto it. There are going to be tentacles that reach into it, okay? Data mining is one of those things. You've all heard the data mining stories, right? Common Core is a set of standards. It doesn't require data mining. But the Race to the Top application does. If you took money from Race to the Top, you are on the hook to provide certain data to the federal government. You know, right, that in our own state of Wisconsin, a couple of months ago, a committee set aside $7.1 million of Wisconsin taxpayer money to begin the process of data mining your kids because they have to. Because the state needs that information. It needs to report it to the federal government. 7.1 million. Now, we're not talking about just asking questions here. It doesn't take $7 million to simply ask your kids a couple of questions or report a few test scores to RWA, the DPI, the federal Department of Education. And just for the record, more Republicans voted for that legislation than Democrats did. There were more on the committee. But that's the reality. Right? That's the reality. And so this is the facility they built in Utah. This is the one that the people of Utah, this is where they want to house all this information on your kids. The people of Utah are so disgusted by it, they're trying to pass legislation to cut the water off the building. They're not having a lot of luck, as you can imagine. But you remember when you and I went to school, and the only thing that ever appeared on our transcripts was our final grade. Well, now under this, right, through all of this, some of this is Obamacare too. There's all that 27,000 pages of Obamacare that we were told we had to pass before we could read it. Well, there are plenty of places. I've got them highlighted at the website. I've highlighted them all. You can go read them. Where the federal government, through healthcare, mandates that the schools become information gathering places in the name of healthcare, your children's health, right? So that's one of those tentacles, right? Because the federal government's in charge of healthcare now. Pretty much everything's healthcare. You can pretty much make anything healthcare. That's why you got people like Bloomberg in New York trying to ban 32-ounce sodas. It's why they're using health now as an opportunity to come after guns. Because now, if the federal government's in charge of health, well, then guns are a healthcare issue, aren't they? And so have any of you taken your little 7th grader to get the CYO exam so we can play Pee Wee football? One of the things that your kid has to sit down and answer, and Mom, the nurse is with you, the kid can't answer it himself. One of the questions, you can't answer it for the kid. One of the questions on all these things that kids have to fill out now for their medical exams are there guns in your house? Would you feel safer if somebody took those guns away? It's the same thing here. So the overreach of these things. Now, every teacher comment, every conduct evaluation, every quiz grade, test grade, eventually, going to have to become part of your kid's permanent record. And that includes medical things. If your kid's dyslexic or got ADHD in 4th grade or 6th grade, struggles, well, the feds have already said it. They plan to make all these records available to employers one day. So when your kid, under Obamacare, your kid's a child till he's 27, right? So at 28, when your kid goes to get his first job, when that happens, in a competitive job market, employers are going to be sifting through kids' behavioral records from 4th grade, kids' ADHD records, what kind of medicine they were on, all that stuff now. It's going to be part of the permanent record moving forward. This is a big deal. And if it's not a federal curriculum, why has the federal government, for the last 4 years, been drafting curriculum standards itself, been drafting programs to implement Common Core and promote it? This is just one. You can see the data on this one. It's February 2013. You can find it online. I stop at the title because I just love it. It's a Department of Education initiative. It's called Promoting Grit, Tenacity, and Perseverance. This is how your kids succeed in school in the 21st century. Now, is that your view of education? Is education for your kids something they have to persevere? Is it something they're just going to have to, although given what you've seen, I understand why they've said this. Is it something that you just have to be tick-like tenacious, just hang in there and get through it? When I hear the word grit, I always see John Wayne getting a bullet dug out of his. Is this your view of education? And if you open this document up to the 43rd page, you see this. And notice it's the federal government doing this through Common Core. These are the ways they want to biologically meter your kids. They don't want to just ask your kids questions. They want to take vital signs and all sorts of information biologically from your kids. This is basically a blood pressure cuff, ordinarily rode around the bicep, but in their infinite wisdom, they adopted that for a little child's wrist. Again, please understand why so many of my examples come from Florida, Kentucky, and New York, because they've seen what you haven't yet. Why do you think a state as sympathetic to the Obama administration in so many areas, why are they balking on Common Core? Because they've seen what you haven't seen yet. All 4 of these things are in New York. As far as I know, none of them are in Wisconsin, as far as I know. And then you ask yourself what that $7 million is going to go to. One thing I would say to you as I back up, I should have said this way earlier. I need to say this. I do not pretend to know what goes on in Mayville schools. I have no idea. I am not trying to suggest to you that your Mayfield kids are suffering from this right now. I have no idea. I don't know. So, and even when we get to the question and answer period, I don't even think I can help you with Mayville. I'm just giving you the overview of Common Core. Sometimes when I give these talks, particularly at small townships, there'll be somebody in the audience who gets really upset about it because they think I'm talking about Mayville. I don't know what your schools are doing. They may be doing none of this. They may be the best schools in the state. I don't know, and I'm not casting any aspersions about your schools. So I don't know. So please take that seriously. And as far as I know, none of you know better than I do in your school, but as far as I know, none of these things are in Wisconsin, right? And so we have one 13-year-old girl, not surprisingly from New York State, who showed up at home one day with a big purple bruise on her wrist. They obviously had it on too tight. It's the only way mom and dad even knew it happened. And so what happened? Little girl says, well, the school nurse and some assistant administrator took her in her room, put that on her wrist, they obviously had it on too tight, and asked her dozens and dozens and dozens of questions, including, do your parents vote? Did they vote in the last election? Who did they vote for in the last election? Are there guns in your house? Would you feel better if somebody from the school came and took those guns away? Are your parents divorced? In this case, the little girl's parents were divorced. Would you feel better if the school helped you live with the parent of your choice? Over and over again, these questions. The pressure mouse, right? Do you know they're even trying, and Pearson's invested in it, they're even trying to make an MRI for classroom reading for youth. They're trying it. It's expensive. They're trying to make a brain scan they can conveniently and easily use in the classroom. The pressure mouse to certain subjects or topics cause your kids to grab the mouse more. And it's not just, by the way, the 3 states that have had this for a long time. 2 of these at least are in California schools already. 2 of them are already in Pennsylvania schools. The posture analysis seat. Do certain subjects cause your kid in school to slouch or to posture to go bad? And one of my favorites, the facial expression camera. Now, in those schools, beware, my friends, of all this money for technology coming from people, all this money for technology coming from people like the Gates and Google. You know, what you're getting with that is really kind of scary in the schools. I know it's nice to be able to say, I'm the superintendent of schools who brought iPads to all my kids. Be careful about that. One Pennsylvania school district last year told kids at the beginning of the year, there would be no pencils, no papers, your only school supply is going to be a laptop computer. And so these kids at public schools showed up, they were handed laptops because they were not allowed to buy their own. They had to take the state laptops. And moms and dads were charged $650 for the use of them for the year. Those laptops contain NASA-grade global positioning information, keystroke technology. Every single keystroke ever punched on that computer became part of the kid's permanent record. Now, I'm not telling you, don't overreact, I'm not telling you that there was somebody sitting perv-like in the principal's office monitoring what your kid was typing. But it's kind of like the NSA stuff, right? They're gathering all this information, they can't possibly watch it all. They dump into files. But if somebody ever accuses you of being a terrorist, they could theoretically go into your file, and whatever they have, phone calls they have, they can piece it together. It's the same thing with this. And those computers all had this. And when you opened the computer and turned it on, whenever that computer was turned on, the camera was rolling, recording anyone who walked in front of it. And that gets part of the data stream too. And Bill Gates they're not even pretending to hide this. People get so freaked out about this, like this is some conspiracy. They're not even pretending to hide it. Bill Gates came out again just about a week and a half ago and said that we have to start doing this now with college kids. Start data mining college kids and tracking them for 10 years after they graduate. So we can find out what colleges are working and which professors are doing their job, right? This technology stuff, right? Now, what does this have to do with Common Core? I think a lot. Because, as you'll see in a moment, whatever else you say about the move from No Child Left Behind to Common Core, this whole thing has been synchronized. Common Core is going to become a vehicle through which this gets done, and we'll show you how in a minute. But this is data mining, right? Again, remember what I say to you. There is nothing in the standards themselves that call for any of this. But the only way the standards got in your schools was through the federal government. And the federal government, by hinging money on it, is the one telling you what you have to do. Again, how is it not a federal curriculum when it's the federal government telling you these things, not that? And so, if you want to make the argument that the standards are fine on their own, go ahead. But I just think it's really naive to suggest that these other things play no part in that, or that there's not a connection.